Morning, how are you guys? Lively group, very good. So just a little background on myself in addition to what was presented. I'm in sales, so as part of my genealogy in sales, I'm going to be talking about myself. And I'll be talking a little bit about my company here as well. So, Pace Packaging, we manufacture plastic bottle unscramblers, plastic bottle orienters, but in addition to that, we also do a little bit in glass when it comes to a bottle orientation. We work a little bit with the distillery market to orient their glass containers, and sometimes also in the pharmaceutical industry, we'll work with cleaning the bottles with ionized air, the glass bottles, and presenting them to the next piece of equipment. So having said that, I just want to give you a quick little presentation on Pace. It was founded back in '68. We were asked to manufacture a bottle unscrambler. So are you guys familiar with what a bottle unscrambler or part feeder is? It's a system that allows you to empty the contents of whatever you're looking to, in this case here, decorate, into a vessel. That vessel feeds another piece of equipment that then sorts it and presents it to a printer, let's just say, or a labeler or a sleever in a proper orientation at the right part per minute rate. So Pace got into the laundry market back in '68, and over the years we've created other pieces of equipment, ancillary equipment that helped push that market. We typically feed or manufacture our equipment to feed more bottling lines. That is liquid filling, powder filling, tablet filling, but we do get involved in the bottle decorating market as well. Located about 30 miles from New York City, up in Jersey. We are about 50 employees. Average tenure of the employee here at Pace is about 12 years. So to recap, so we manufacture bottle unscramblers, bottle orienters. A bottle orienter is a piece of equipment such as maybe a Honey Bear bottle that needs to be oriented prior to being labeled, prior to being filled, capped, and so on and so forth. So we manufacture bottle orienters, conveyor cleaners. So if you're filling a product or if you're maybe applying a lubrostat onto a bottle, plastic bottle, that conveyor cleaner cleans that conveyor so that we get rid of any kind of tackiness on it, dirt, debris, something that you don't want the customers to see when they open up their carton or pick a bottle off the shelf. Disc sorter feeders, stand-up units, lay-down units, and hopper elevators. I'll get into a little more detail as to what these components are here. These are the primary markets that we target. As you can see here, we go from the bottled water, distilled spirits. To my previous speaker, yes, we do see a little transition from glass to plastic in the distilled spirits market. I'm quite sure some of you have seen the Fireball bottles. They're everywhere nowadays, right? It's all in plastic. A bottle decorating, cosmetic market, the personal care market, and so on and so forth. So those are the markets that we target. From a Pace perspective, from a bottle unscrambling, orienting perspective, we are pretty much a recession-proof industry, right? When COVID hit, nobody was driving. So automotive oil, down. But people were starting to cook more at home. So the spice market, for example, went up. People were doing more laundry. They were afraid of the COVID. So they were doing laundry 5-6 times a day. Laundry market went up. And then people started drinking a little bit more at home. So the distillery market went up. So we are a recession-proof industry. When something goes up, something comes down. When something comes down, something goes up. So that's a typical Pace bottle unscrambler. We manufacture different sizes. The different sizes correlate to different bottle per minute rates and container size as well. So this would be our standard model 600. You can see the nomenclature right over here, model 600. Here we are unscrambling it's an oil container, motor oil container. Model 600 would probably spit about almost 300 bottles a minute on that size container. And then from there, it would probably go into a bottle orienter to make sure those necks or leading or trailing so that the filler does not miss the spout. Cleaning motor oil is not exactly a fun thing to do. Here's another unscrambler. These systems over here then, just for your record, are fed by a hopper. There's a hopper in the back. It's a vessel which allows operators to place bottles into that hopper. So you don't have anybody standing there placing the bottles onto the conveyor. You don't have anybody opening a box up and then manually putting them onto a turntable. You can simply open the box up, empty as many bottles as you want into this hopper vessel, and that system will automatically feed the unscrambler. There's different ways of feeding that hopper. You can have an operator open a box. You can have a depalletizer sweep the bottles into the hopper. A pallet could be about 9 feet tall with slip sheets in between. You can have a tote dumper. A tote dumper, it's a container that's about 48 by 48 tall, empties the bottles into the hopper automatically. We have a level control in the hopper that tells the tote dumper when to feed the hopper or not. That feeds the unscrambler. The unscrambler tells the hopper when to have bottles or not, and we feed the bottles onto the conveyor. And this is, in case no one's seen a bottle unscrambler before, this is this one over here. I think it's, if anybody's from the south a little bit, around the Alabama, Mississippi area, that's a Milo's tea. So this one over here is feeding at about 200 bottles a minute. And the beautiful thing about this, right, even at this rate over here, about 200 bottles a minute, you can see the bottles are going to be exiting the machine in a stable fashion. So if anybody's been placing bottles by hand, they realize that it's not an easy feat to do. You're trying to place something onto something that's moving, and to place it without having it fall over is a challenge. 300 bottles a minute, excuse me. And then if you do place it by hand and you by accident knock one container over here, you just have a domino effect of all the containers coming down. So the automated process really simplifies things and really keeps things moving. So it can keep your systems moving. Here we have a bottle unscrambler, bottle orienter. So again, if you need to have the bottles oriented as they exit the machine, this system allows you to, again, the operator does not have to stand there to pre-orient the bottles. You just put the bottles into a hopper elevator, and the system itself will then pre-orient the bottles and feed your next printing process, labeling process in an efficient manner. Here's another short little video. It's a surprise to me as it is to you. Yeah. Here are caulk tubes. So I have been invited here to speak to you today by my good friends here at Common. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. With the Common, here we are, we're unscrambling caulk tubes. These caulk tubes are then going to be fed onto a conveyor. That conveyor then is going to be feeding the bottles to a Common printer, which then puts the ink, or gets tattooed, I heard here, tattooed by the ink printer. So here we are feeding the caulk tubes. This unit's going to be feeding either short nub tubes, long nozzle tubes, and also in a different color and varieties. And over here we're going to stand them upright, and then we're going to take them, we're going to lie them down on their side so that they can get printed accordingly. Here we are in the process of laying down on the side. And that's how they are presented at the exit end. And we can get that nozzle facing the operator side, facing the non-operator side. All our equipment is custom manufactured, so you tell us what height you need the equipment to be at. Tell us how many parts per minute you need to be feeding. You tell us the orientation of the part that need to be fed, and we will build the equipment to match your needs. Different sizes we manufacture, again, as noted before. 3 foot, 4 foot, 5, 6, 8, and 10 foot diameter disc sorters. Here's a rendition of the paste unscrambler, for example, feeding the Common printer. This was done for a project over here in Wisconsin for Nook, where they were feeding baby bottles. The baby bottles were naked, and we were able to feed the bottles into the printer. Some of the containers needed to be face up, some containers needed to be face down, and then subsequently fed into the printer, and the printer would apply the 1, 2, 3, or 4 different colors to that particular container. In this case, we're running parts at about 50 parts per minute. System's completely automated, as noted before. So the unscrambler itself, as noted, you fill the hopper up with as many containers as can fit in that hopper. The operator here is pretty much here just for depiction purposes only. The unit runs automatically. We have a photo line in the back over here that tells the machine, start feeding, stop feeding, start feeding, stop feeding, as well as the Common printer will do the same thing to our equipment. If something happened with the Common printer, needed an ink change hypothetically, just tell us our machine that we're going to go into a sleep mode for a while, let them replace that ink, and then we'll start back up again. So it's fully automated. Even to this day, I've been in the unscrambling business for 20 some odd years. To go to a dairy facility and watch these units run 500, 600 bottles per minute, and there's nobody around. There's just nobody. There's that unscrambler just chugging along, feeding the next piece of equipment. It's pretty impressive. From a technology perspective, we all experienced through COVID workers not coming to work, and then subsequently after that, finding people that were technically savvy enough to help operate the equipment and so on and so forth. So the paste unscrambler, the way it's designed, it's a relatively simple piece of equipment. We have a couple of belts that run the bottles, or the caulk tubes in this case, into the machine. The equipment looks complex, but it's a hook, it's a couple of motors. You tell the motors how fast to run, you put a little air pressure to the hook, and those containers will get oriented for you. So the unit is designed, we sell all over the world. Manufactured in New Jersey, but we sell to Turkey, Australia, Argentina, Spain, Mexico, the entire world. We have 3 service technicians on hand, and the ability to support all this equipment with only 3 techs tells you that the equipment is capable of being run by the local operators and local technicians. That's the picture here of a hopper that feeds the unscrambler. A couple polycarbonate doors, open the doors, empty your contents into that hopper, and we make them in different sizes, and they're customizable too. Sometimes, for example, with fish pock over here, the caulk tubes, the tubes are being fed from above into the hopper, buried plastics as well. I'm going to go to them tomorrow. So we close off the back end of this hopper over here. That allows you to get more volume of that hopper, so the bottles are not spilling out. We close that off, feed it from the top. We can extend the sidewalls to make the hopper even bigger. Same footprint, but add more volume by extending those sidewalls. And we'll grace you with one last video here. And the music, of course. So this is a vitamin application. If I'm not mistaken, this is the gummy bears. Gummy bears, if you've not noticed recently, have taken off. You gotta find gummy bears, vitamin E, vitamin C, multi. Now there a lot of the cannabis CBDs are coming in these gummy bear forms. So you can see it's a very simple operation, right? We have the unscrambler sorter feeds the bottles. So all the bottles that are, let's say, neck leading, we don't like. We don't like the neck leaders. We want to make sure that they exit the machine base leading. So here the hook is grabbing the neck of the bottle, turning the bottle 180 degrees. Now they're all going to be base leading. Here we are knocking them down, running them over an ionized air rinser, blowing some ionized air. Some customers asked us to blow the ionized air around the bottle to remove any static electricity, so they can be able to print or label the containers properly without any kind of static buildup on the container. And over here we can see the bottles being stood up. And in this process over here, the next piece of equipment is the gummy bear filler. I know I'm putting a lot of information on you at this time. Any questions? I'm not from Jersey, but sometimes I talk a lot. Sales guy. All right, if we have any questions, we'll continue. So, and we also manufacture standalone units too, right? So the unscrambler does not have to be tied into the orienter. The orienter can be a standalone unit over here. So that's, here we go, a standalone unit for our trigger spray bottles. Similar concept. We take a look at the bottle, use a camera, use a couple photo eyes, sense the bottle orientation. Once we see the orientation, we either turn the bottle or we don't turn the bottle. And we can run bottles that are either, in this case, trigger spray or neck leaders. We can also do square containers as well. So if a container needs to be oriented 90, 90, 90, we can orient square containers as well. And one of the things, like with center neck bottles in particular, we can run up to about 400 bottles a minute in line. So that's pretty impressive considering that the footprint of this machine itself, from a legs perspective, the legs are about 4 feet wide by about 2.5 to 3 feet deep. So in a pretty small footprint, we can orient about 400 bottles a minute on a center neck bottle. I've got one more little video over here. You can see this a little bit in slow motion. So again, all the neck leaders are being grabbed and hooked, and the base leaders slide underneath the hook and are simply stood up. So I know I'm showing you a lot of pictures of bottles over here, a lot of videos of bottles, but if there are other applications, such as maybe like caps or parts, we run a lot of fiber containers, for example. So if there's any kind of application where you think a sorter or an unscrambler may be suited, feel free to send me a picture, an email, along with some bottle per minute rates, and I'll be happy to look at it for you. I've been in the industry for over 30 years now, just about. So it's if I can't help you, I'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction and have somebody else help you out. So here we are, you can see us orienting this bottle over here. So for our FATs, I was, as noted before, I used to be in the auger industry, filling powders. Nice industry, but what a mess. It just powder everywhere, right? When I joined the parts feeding industry and the bottle feeding industry, what a beautiful, it's just empty bottles, there's not a mess, something falls on the floor, you pick it up, throw it back in the hopper, and you're running again, right? You're not, in the printing industry, you probably can only print once maybe, and that's about it. You gotta throw that bottle away to recycle it. In the under-scrambling industry, you can reuse that bottle 100 times. I don't have a clock on me, so I don't know if my time is up, but...
You're doing well.
All right. Do we have any questions, possibly?
Is the camera software PACE, or is it?
It's not. Good question. We used to use Cognex cameras in the past. We've transitioned a little bit to the Keyence cameras, both over-the-market products. Good question. We try not to. So our parts business, believe it or not, we all love the parts business, right? But our parts business is relatively small. We use a lot of components that are off the shelf, and that's why we can support a lot of these countries. Because a lot of those components can be purchased overseas as well, not just here in the U.S. market, which gives us a good advantage when you're looking at competition. We even had one customer, for example, it was a German customer doing sauces and ketchups and mustards. They built a facility here in Tennessee. And so we had equipment in Europe. So it was all European equipment except for the Pace Unscrambler, it was an American made. And then when they opened up a facility here in Dyersburg, Tennessee, They again purchased all the equipment, the filler, the capper, the labeler, sleeve, all the equipment was European. And again, the Pace Unscrambler was the American piece of equipment. Yes, sir.
What was the most difficult package you ever had to orient?
Most difficult package for orientation.
Or was it a speed issue?
No, it's a good question because after 30 years, you sort of know what to quote and what not to quote, right? So you, you don't want to get yourself in too much trouble. I think speed, when you're quoting a project and maybe not quoting the right size machine, would be a speed issue. So typically, I think the biggest one that sort of bit me in the derriere would be a full bottle, apple juice, gallon container at 150 bottles per minute. This was during COVID, so I didn't get a chance to travel the facility, but it was wet, apple juice everywhere, so there was sugar everywhere. Nobody was coming to work, so they were relying on the equipment to start up automatically, and that was probably the most challenging. So 3 years ago. We'll never do that again. Yes, sir.
What sort of adaptations do you have to run glass bottles?
So from a glass bottle perspective, great question. So we cannot just empty glass bottles into the hopper. You will chip them and break them, especially since they're looking at reducing the amount of glass in the glass bottles, I heard. So you have to either place the bottles into the sorter by hand pre-oriented, or we put a chute, so the operator will be able to sit there and place the bottles onto the chute, and the chute then slides the bottles into the disc sorter and into the process of the unscrambling process. Or what we've done for a couple pharmaceuticals is we would have a table where the operator would take a slip sheet of glass jars, glass containers, slide it onto that table, and the table then would automatically feed the unscrambler. So there are some adaptations we can to sort of help improve that process.
Any use of robots?
Great question. Yes, robots. Robots in the unscrambling world they're gaining momentum. Truth be told, we are in the process of building our second robotic unscrambler. We built one during Las Vegas. That was about almost 4 years ago, I guess it was. And we're up to reiteration number 2 on the robotic side. So the issue with the robots is they're a little bit costly still, because a lot of people are still looking to run, at least in our world right now, at that 200, 300 bottle per minute rate. So the footprint gets pretty large with the robotic unscrambler. The belt and hook system, by far, much smaller footprint. I can bang out 300 bottles per minute. As you saw, that little Milo's T, that machine was probably no bigger than this screen over here. But robots are getting more and more prevalent now, and they're slowly transitioning on the front side of the packaging line. So a lot of it into the cosmetic industry is very strong, the robotic unscrambler. So we are getting there. Just give us about another year or two, and we'll have our name well known into that market. Yes?
Static control. Who's your static control, and are you automatically adjusting it on the fly?
We are not automatically adjusting on the fly, and we use Seamco as our supplier for the ionized air rinsers, and we also supply a vacuum motor and a filter as well. But just for the static bars, we would use Seamco as our supplier. They just came out recently with like a 24-volt system as well. So before we had to use a power supply to get enough electricity, so we blow that air over that ionized bar, we would get that to reduce that static. But now they came up with a very simple 24-volt system. So Seamco, they're trying to stay ahead of the trend over here. They're doing pretty well.